Have you ever looked into your pet's eyes and felt something ancient staring back? As if your souls have danced together before, not in this life, but in one long forgotten. As if they are not merely a pet, but a piece of your past returning to you through silence, through breath, through presence. Welcome, dear friend, to Lotus of Dharma, where ancient wisdom helps us understand the quiet threads of love and memory that weave across lifetimes. Today, we will explore a question that has stirred the hearts of many animal lovers and spiritual seekers alike. Has your pet been with you before? And if so, what might that mean? Here are 5 spiritual signs that this may be true, and what they reveal about the eternal bond between you and the companion who walks beside you in this life, and perhaps in many lives before. There are encounters in life that transcend logic and time. You may recall the first moment your pet came into your life not through calculation, but through an inexplicable pull, like gravity of the soul. You saw them, and without words, you knew. This wasn't affection born in a moment. It was remembrance blooming through the veil of lifetimes, as if something old and sacred had returned. In the teachings of the Buddha, we are reminded again and again, no being enters our life by accident. Every connection is carried by the invisible current of karma, shaped through countless lives of interaction. And this law of karmic affinity applies not only to humans, but to all sentient beings. A dog, a cat, a bird, even a wandering animal at your doorstep may be responding to an old agreement your soul once made. I once met a woman who shared a story that echoes this truth. Years ago, she adopted a dog from a shelter. He had been mistreated, withdrawn, unwilling to trust anyone. But the moment she entered his kennel, he walked slowly toward her and pressed his forehead gently into her hand, as if he had been waiting for her all along. She described it as a homecoming, though she didn't understand why. In the years that followed, he would wait her before panic attacks, sit beside her during grief, and place his paw on her heart when she cried, not out of instinct, but with startling sensitivity. When he passed away, she felt as if she had lost a lifelong friend, not a pet. She once told me, with tears in her eyes, I didn't adopt him. He found me. And it felt like we had already loved each other long before. This is what we mean by soul recognition. It is not fantasy. It is the whisper of past lives, returning through eyes we thought were new. If the mind is quiet enough, you can feel it, a familiarity without reason, a love that arrives already mature. And so, dear listener, if you have looked into the eyes of your pet and felt a deep sense of peace, of safety, of knowing, you are not imagining it. You are remembering. That animal may have once waited beside you in another life, or protected you, or simply walked with you in silence. Form changes. Species change. But consciousness continues. And love, true love, is never destroyed by death. It simply travels and returns when the time is right. The greatest truth is this: they didn't enter your life by chance. They returned to fulfill a bond that never truly ended. A karmic thread, invisible to the eye, but unmistakable to the heart. And if the first sign is that moment of soul recognition, like meeting a long-lost friend across the veil of lifetimes, then the second sign emerges quietly, not in a beginning, but in the days that follow. It is in how they stay. In how they sense your sadness, your silence, your sorrow, and respond not with language, but with presence. A presence that heals. Unlike humans, animals do not speak in words. But that does not mean they do not speak. Their language is older than language itself. It is the language of awareness, of stillness, of being fully with you. In Buddhist thought, this quality is not trivial. It is a reflection of a deep karmic sensitivity, a connection refined through time and tested by suffering. A being who has walked beside you in previous lives, who has felt your pain before, does not need to hear your voice to know you are hurting. They remember. And they respond with the only medicine that truly works: unconditional presence. There is a story I carry from a retreat in northern Thailand. A man in his 60s, an ex-soldier turned practitioner, came to the monastery to deal with decades of grief and guilt. His wife had passed away years earlier, and he lived alone with his old cat, a quiet tabby named Deo. During the retreat, he wept as he described the nights he would sit alone in darkness, unable to pray, unable to sleep. And every time without fail, Dale would climb into his lap, curl into a tight circle, and simply breathe. No movement. No demands. Just breath against breath. He said, "She never left until my thoughts calmed down. And sometimes, I think she absorbed the pain I could no longer carry." When he spoke these words, something in the meditation hall shifted. Because many of us realized we had experienced the same. That moment when your dog rests their head on your knee just as your thoughts begin to spiral. That waiter bird grows silent as your tears begin to fall. That quiet nudge from your pet when no one else notices you are falling apart. It is not coincidence. It is compassion without ego. A form of Buddhist awakened heart that does not ask to be seen, but simply acts. In Mahayana Buddhism, we speak of bodhisattvas, beings who postpone their final enlightenment in order to return and help others. While we often imagine them as divine or human-like, who is to say that a bodhisattva cannot come back in the form of a small, silent animal? Who is to say that compassion must wear robes or speak scripture to be holy? Sometimes, the most profound compassion walks on four legs, sleeps on your couch, and greets you at the door after every hard day. These beings, our pets, may not solve our problems, but they remind us that we are never alone in them. And that reminder is often what pulls us back from the edge. In your darkest hours, when no one knew what to say, they said it all without saying anything. Just by staying close. In the Vinayat, the code of monastic conduct, the Buddha advised monks to offer kindness to all beings, for in countless lives, they have all been our family. When I hear this, I often think not just of the beings we pass on the road, but of the beings that sleep at our feet, who share our breath, and who show us how to love without needing to understand. If your pet has ever stayed beside you while you cried, or climbed into your bed on nights your soul was breaking, do not dismiss it as mere instinct. It may be a soul that once promised to protect you and has returned, not to speak, but to listen with its whole being. Their silence is not emptiness. It is sacred space where your suffering is held, not judged, and slowly, without words, allowed to dissolve. And once you've felt their silent comfort, once you've been healed by their presence more than any words could offer, a new realization begins to dawn. You start to notice things. Small things. Unspoken things. Gestures, reactions, moments so subtle, yet so uncannily human. You begin to ask yourself, how can they possibly understand this much? This is the third sign, that strange and sacred sense that your pet is more than an animal. That in their eyes, in their movements, in the way they seem to know, lives something ancient, something wise. In Buddhist cosmology, there is no hard line between the human realm and the animal realm. These are not fixed categories but temporary states of consciousness, shaped by karma. A being who once had a human life may, through karmic unfolding, take birth as an animal, not as punishment, but sometimes as a continuation. Some animals, especially those drawn closely into human lives, carry traces of past human experiences. Their tendencies, their awareness, their eyes, often speak of a mind that has walked before, that has felt, thought, suffered, and perhaps loved before. Let me share a story from a practitioner in Kyoto, a woman who came to one of our temple's winter meditation retreats. She had a parrot named Kiko who had lived with her for nearly 15 years. What astonished everyone who met Kiko was not just his vocabulary, which was rich and complex, but the way he would respond emotionally. When her mother passed away, Kiko stopped speaking for a week. He refused to eat unless she was in the room. And one night, when she broke down crying, she swore she heard him say, in the softest voice, "It's okay. I'm here." She thought she'd imagine it. But later that year, during a phone call with her therapist, a call she took in the same room as the parrot, Kiko interrupted the silence by mimicking a line she had once heard from her late father, "Don't forget who you are." Tears streamed down her face, not out of fear, but from a realization she couldn't explain. She said to me, "It wasn't like a parrot repeating something. It was like someone I loved remembered me." I told her gently, "Perhaps someone did." The Buddha taught that consciousness continues, that habits, tendencies, and imprints carry forward from life to life. If a being cultivated mindfulness, love, and relational depth in one life, those seeds can bloom again, even in a different form. What you see in your pet, the attentiveness, the quiet empathy, the curiosity that seems to go beyond instinct, may not be learned in this life alone. It may be the echo of a former self, now returned to walk beside you in a simpler form, freed from the distractions of speech, ego, and complexity, and able to simply be. In this way, our pets may serve not only as companions, but as quiet teachers. Their human-like behavior is not something we should dismiss or rationalize away. It may be the most honest expression of their karmic history, one that includes lifetimes of thought, insight, and yes, suffering. And now, perhaps they are with you not because they need to learn, but because you do. Watch closely. There may be more soul in their gaze than in the most eloquent of speeches. There may be past life wisdom in their silence, in the way they sit beside you in meditation, or mimic the patterns of your days, as if they've done it all before, not once, but many times. And maybe they have. And if by now, you've begun to sense that your pet's presence holds echoes of something deeper, that their silence speaks volumes, and their gaze carries memory, then perhaps it's time to reflect not just on who they are, but when they arrived. This is the fourth sign. They came into your life not by chance, but at precisely the moment your soul was unraveling. In Buddhism, there is a concept called Jurienkai, dependent origination. Nothing arises independently. Every encounter, every event, every bond is the fruit of causes and conditions woven over countless lives. And some beings do not return to us in moments of ease, they return at the breaking point. When our heart is fractured, when our path is dark, when we have no words left for prayer, that is when they appear. Not as saints, not as miracles, but as a stray dog, or a kitten trembling in the rain. A bird on your windowsill that refuses to fly away. And somehow, without explanation, you feel, this is not a coincidence. I remember a man who once visited our monastery during the rainy season. He had just lost his wife to cancer, and was walking through the ruins of his grief like a ghost. He told me that on the very morning of her passing, as he sat in silence in their empty kitchen, a thin, injured dog limped into his garden and curled beneath a tree they had planted together. He didn't have the heart to turn it away. That night, the dog lay beside his chair. When he cried, it lifted its head. When he couldn't sleep, it placed a paw on his foot. And for the first time in weeks, he felt something shift inside him, not joy, but the return of being seen. He named the dog Lin, meaning spirit in Vietnamese. Because I feel like she carried my wife's breath back to me, he whispered. Not as a soul reborn, but as a soul who couldn't bear to leave me alone in that moment. Whether or not that was literally true, I told him, does not matter. In Buddhism, meaning is not always found in logic, but in presence. In the heart's recognition of when it is being held, gently, without explanation. So many people tell me the same. I wasn't looking for a pet. I wasn't ready. But they just showed up. I smile and say, of course. That's what soul companions do. There are karmic contracts we cannot remember, but which life honors anyway. Sometimes, the being who once walked beside you returns when your legs can barely move. Sometimes, the soul who loved you silently in another life now finds a way to love you again, in a body covered in fur, with no voice but endless listening. And it is often in these moments, when we are at our most shattered, that these beings arrive, not to save us, but to sit with us in the silence we feared we could not bear alone. This, too, is a kind of spiritual rescue. Not dramatic, not divine, but deeply human. Or perhaps, more than human. The arrival of such a companion is not random. It is grace, disguised in the form of karmic return. So if your pet came into your life during a time of crisis, if they appeared just as something fell apart, as someone left, as illness or grief consumed you, ask not why now, but why not sooner. Then smile gently at the mystery. Because some souls only return when they are most needed, and not a moment before. And then, after all the signs, the bond, the comfort, the strange human-like moments, the way they entered your life when everything else was falling apart, there remains one final, quiet truth. A truth you feel not in their presence, but in a shadow it casts. You fear losing them, in a way that feels far too familiar. This is the fifth sign, that unexplainable sorrow that arises, not from their aging or illness, but from somewhere deeper. As if your soul remembers saying goodbye to them once before. As if the grief is not new, but repeating. In the teachings of impermanence, the Buddha reminded us that all compounded things must pass. But he also taught that the suffering of loss arises not just from the ending, but from attachment to what has passed before. Sometimes we do not cry because something is ending now, we cry because something ended long ago, and never truly healed. I remember an elderly nun, who lived alone in the forest for many years. Her only companion was a large, old tortoise-shell cat named Miss Su. Miss Su had followed her into the monastery grounds one winter and refused to leave. He would sit beside her during her morning chants, nap in the meditation hall, and wait outside her kuti when she returned from alms. No one trained him. No one taught him temple etiquette. And yet, he seemed to belong. One day, I asked her, "Do you think he's just a cat, or something more?" She smiled gently, eyes full of a kind of sorrow that had already made peace with itself. She said, "He has died in my arms once before. I don't know when. But I know I couldn't save him then, and I still carry that ache." Then she looked down at Miss Su, who was purring softly on her lap. "This time, I will say goodbye with more grace." Her words stayed with me. Because so often, that is what we are truly afraid of. Not the pain of losing our pet, but the pain of losing them again. The echo of a grief buried under lifetimes, now rising again like mist from still water. Why else do some people experience such disproportionate sorrow over the illness or loss of an animal? Why does it feel like mourning a family member you didn't know you had? It may be because, in some deeper register of the heart, You have known them, held them, lost them, and now you are being asked to do it all over again, but this time with more awareness. The final teaching here is simple, but not easy. Everything that returns to us, returns to help us release. Not to avoid loss, but to face it with clarity and compassion. If your fear of losing your pet is haunting you, perhaps it is not a warning, but an invitation. An invitation to love more mindfully this time. To say thank you before it is too late. To let go, not with desperation, but with presence. Because just as they came to you when you needed them, you, too, are a karmic refuge for them. Perhaps this time, you will hold them as they once held you. Perhaps this life, you both learn how to part, without clinging. And so, if you lie awake at night, watching your pet sleep, and feel a tear fall without knowing why. If you sometimes say I love you a little too often, a little too late. If you wonder how you will go on without them, then know this. You are not mourning what is ending. You are remembering what once ended, and is returning again now, so that you may finally love it, and let it go, in peace. So, has your pet been with you before? If something in your heart whispered yes while listening to this, then perhaps it isn't just belief. Perhaps it is memory, quiet, ancient, and waiting to be remembered. In those silent moments when your pet curls beside you, in the depth of their gaze, in the calm that arises when you're simply together, you may be touching something far older than this life. A bond that didn't begin here, and won't end here. Cherish them. Love them fully, without holding back. Let them teach you what presence means. For in this endless journey of birth and becoming, the souls who walk beside us, no matter their form, never arrived by accident. They return because something in you, and something in them, was never truly separate. And if this message has touched something in you, perhaps it's time to share your story, to listen more closely, and to walk more mindfully with the one who has chosen to return to you. You are not alone on this path, and neither are they.